Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The questions from the brothers here, we'll try to take them. And then we'll see what we have online by Allah's permission. Hamza, tafadhal.
أحسن الله إليكم شيخ.
وإليك.
Let's say you go ask prayer and the Imam is leading and he goes to his third rak'ah and he doesn't do his tahiyyat. He does his tahiyyat on the third rak'ah. He forgot, then he prays to sujood after the last rak'ah and you come in. How do you...
Understood. When the Imam salams, you keep praying yourself. You start with your own prayer. And if you want to be on the safe side and make that with him, maybe. But the problem with that is, obviously, he himself is in charge of the jama'ah, the congregation, making the sajda to sahu. He does that. And in normal situations, that will be with those who are praying behind him from beginning to finish. But now you're changing the nature of your prayer that you're making up behind him. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Na'am akhi.
For the fourth type, ahsanu alaykum. For the fourth type of tadlis, I know in Musalah we go over tadlis of some of the narrators who use ana, where in some cases they're doing it for deception and in some cases they're doing it just for ease. Is there any way where tadlis could be done where the seller isn't doing deception, where it may have just been done for a different reason, or is it always deception if they're doing tadlis?
Understood. Jazakallahu khairan, barakallahu fikum. Tadlis in sciences of hadith, as you mentioned, it doesn't necessarily have to be for deception. But there's a difference between ana and tadlis. لا تلزم من العنعنة التدليس. العنعنة شيء والتدليس شيء. يعني the bridge between the tadlis is, and the rawi is the an'ana. But just because the rawi says an doesn't mean that he's making tadlis. واضح? However, in most cases, for the narrator not to lie, he's going to say an, anna, qala. إذا قال سمعت أو حدثني فهو كذاب. Okay? But just because the narrator makes ana doesn't mean that he is a mudallis. And that's a mistake that many people, they make, big and small, young and old. Just because the rawi says ana لا يلزم أنه دلس. وحتى لو دلس, there are levels of tadlis. As far as in a contract, I can't understand, or I can't fathom when the seller would make tadlis unless it's intentionally hiding something, fattening up the animal, making something seem bigger and finer than what it actually is, rubbing something on it, covering up, right? Wallahu ta'ala alam. Wa iyyakum. From online, Abir?
HD Fontana, California. What is the ruling on flipping a coin to make a decision?
Repeat the question again, please.
What is the ruling on flipping a coin to make a decision?
طيب. What's the ruling on flipping a coin to make a decision? I think it's going to differ on a person who makes a personal decision versus someone who flips a coin between two parties or between two factions, in which want a fair, impartial, indiscriminate way of who goes first or who dies. Right? He said, you guys pull the straw. Whoever has the shortest one, what? He has to go. Why me?
You pulled it.
That's your lousy luck, your fate, not mine's. Al-Muhim is that if you have to make a personal decision, then the believer should do something better than flipping a coin. And that's making istikhara. And what I mean by istikhara right now, and what I'm saying by istikhara, don't ask me no questions about this, is dua. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about salat al-istikhara. I'm talking about what? Dua. Not 2 rak'ah. I'm not talking about that. I didn't say that. Istikhara, I'm using meaning what? Dua. And also shura. After the istikhara, what do you think? As far as just flipping a coin in which a person has 2 options, I don't know what to do, let me just flip a coin. Then that may not necessarily be haram. However, a person may become weak-willed and weak-minded. and getting into the habit of, right or left, flipping a coin, like superstition of letting a bird out of cage, or groundhog, right? Groundhog's Day. If it sees its shadow, if it goes back into the hole, right? Two-Face, right? He always did what? Flip a coin, right? He was what? He was messed up. And he had no guidance, but he had to what? Always flip a coin. So you become dependent upon that. You get the point I'm trying to make? You become dependent upon, I don't know what to do, let me flip a coin. Let me flip a coin. But it doesn't necessarily have to be haram, but there's something for the Muslim that's what? Better. As far as two teams, two factions, different stories. No way we can resolve it. I say, that's what? Or rock, paper, scissors. Right? Which one you use? Which you go to? The paper or the rock? The rock. Tayyib. And obviously that's a long discussion. And of course the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he wanted to travel, which of his wives he would take with him, he would make Qur'an. They would pull pieces of wheat or straw, what we call drawing lots. Who gets to go with me? All right? So the concept of doing something that is totally impartial is established in the Sunnah. But there's a long discussion with regards to games of chance. And are games of chance absolutely haram in Islam? What's haram? Is it the dice, the die, or is it the act, backgammon, chess? There's a long discussion with regards to Mason. Right? Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
UK, Leicester, UK. Ustad, what is meant by Ibn Kathir's statement that when the Salaf were asked what is irja', they replied, the religion of the kings?
Right. What's meant by the statement of Ibn Kathir that he said that when the Salaf were asked what is irja', it is the religion of the kings? Allah surely knows best. Perhaps, wallahu alam, those who are quoted to have said this, Allahu alam, is the concept of person having wealth and luxury, power and influence, in which it causes them to have bad deeds, wicked deeds. And when they're asked or questioned about their bad or wicked deeds, they may say, it's in my heart and I'm working on it and Allah knows my intention, etc. Wallahu alam. What's important is the Salaf al-Salih, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, when you look at how they looked at politics and politicians and people of the aristocracy and nobility, and how they looked at those people and how they dealt with those people and how they feared being in charge and being noble and being wealth and royal, and what it in most cases leads to. It's very contrast to us today. Wallahu alam.
MA, Bronx, New York. Can you wear Quran with Quranic verses? And if so, can you wear it in the bathroom?
Muslims should not wear Quranic verses on a piece of clothing, a ring, a watch, a bracelet, a necklace, amulet, whatever. He shouldn't do that. And for argument's sake, if he is going to wear it, then out of respect, he should cover it up. Out of respect. What are the details on wearing a bracelet or necklace that has Allah's name on it, or Ayatul Kursi, or things like this? That's a long discussion that you guys aren't ready for right now. That's above your pay grade. What did the Salaf say about wearing verses from the Quran? But for sure, the safest thing to say is that it shouldn't be done. And no doubt about it, how it can open up the door and lead to a person wearing something that's not from the Quran and not from Allah's names and attributes. Right? Ignorance and a person being afraid or scared or worried about something. Here, take this, wear this. It's Ayatul Kursi on it. It says this verse from Surah Sa'd, and next thing you know, it's not. They were misled following someone, or they're lying, and next thing you know, you're wearing the names of Diablo, right? What did they say? Mustan, Damien. What is it called? His name? Several names. Allah Mustan.
VT, Bronx, New York. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sensei. Hayakallah. Is there any proof that the events described at the end of Surah Ma'idah with the table being the same as, quote unquote, the Last Supper?
The Ma'idah, the table spread, and the Last Supper with the disciples. Is there any proof that they are parallel? Only my Lord truly knows. It's very interesting that that surah is called that, even though Allah talks about many things, but it's called Al-Ma'idah. And obviously one of the most highlighting events in the lights of Christ is the Last Supper and the Holy Grail, so on and so forth. So that's very interesting in itself. Can we say that? Only Allah surely knows. I can't step out of my boundaries. Pharaoh, his body being preserved in a French museum. And Allah saying that on this day, نُنَجِّيكَ بِبَدْنِكَ لِتَكُونَ لِمَنْ خَلْفَكَ آيَةً فَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ بِبَدْنِكَ. Allah says, on this day we will save you and rescue you with your physical body for you to be a sign for those who will come afterwards. Does that mean that that mummified body in the museum is his body? Is it parallel? Allah. It's not impossible, right? And many things that Christians believe or Catholics believe and do, many things, not all, are valid and in accordance with the Quran. And there's nothing which is impossible. But does that mean that I now have the authority to say that Ma'idah is the Last Supper? It's a different story. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
RA London, UK, best translation, English Quran.
I haven't read all the translations, so I can't say what's the best translation. And I'm a fan of not saying things like that unless a person has read and studied all of them. Then he can say the best, in my opinion, is such and such and such and such. So I don't know. There are many good translations. I would advise and I would recommend that the translations of the Quran should have the following characteristics. The translations of the meanings, because that's a long discussion. Can the Quran be translated? Is it valid? Is it lawful to do a word-for-word translation and study of the Quran? That's a different discussion. What's important is that the translation of the meanings, or if you say the translation of the Quran, it should be something that is fluent in English. And the translator or the interpreter should take into consideration the reader. And it's meant to be read. And it isn't meant to be one verse, a paragraph in English, with a bracket and a parentheses and a colon and a semicolon and a hyphen, in which is reading through one verse, one translation is like a paragraph with a footnote. Everyone understand this? So it has to be fluent and smooth in English because it's meant for the benefit of the English reader. And the difference between translating the meanings, or for argument's sake, you say translation and tafsir. It's not meant to be a tafsir. It's meant to be basic, simple translation. So that's the first thing that should be taken into consideration. And secondly is the translation, it should be something which isn't agendified. It should not be a translation of someone who has an agenda. And they start translating things how they want to and interpreting things how they want to and putting a spin on words for their own agenda. But it should be something which is organic and original, most accurate in English. And it should not have figurative interpretation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names and attributes. Alright? And there are many available translations. Off the top of my head, one that is simple and easy, which is in general, it's digestible, simple, Sahih International. Right? Summarized, it's not extensive, there's no footnotes, it's very simple. Wallahu ta'ala. That's off the top of my head. Wallahu alam. And there are different websites that offer all of the translations. And I think that all the translations have their benefit, have their ups and their downs. And many brothers, they go extreme. And they become overzealous when they start talking about translations. Marmaduke Pictal is no good in that translation. It's do away with it. It's bid'ah, da, 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 da. You can't just disrespect that translation like that. How many people accepted Islam through that? How many people that was the first taste of the Quran through Marmaduke Pictal? for you to just, say it's nothing. And let alone the fact that if there are some issues and mistakes, then the translation that you're pushing and promoting also has what? And that's, a part of the dawah nonsense. This hadith has da'if, this book has da'if hadith in it. And so does the book of your sheikh. Let's burn what? All of them then. This person, he made this mistake, he's an innovator, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no problem. Let's burn this book as well. So when you're overzealous and you're not scholastic and you don't have that much knowledge, you're gonna blunder. And there's nothing wrong with having jealousy for the deen and fervor for the deen, but the knowledge always has to dominate that. And you cannot be a bigot for your group or your clique, your gang. And you see no khair, no virtue in someone outside of your gang. Alright? That's a major trick of the shaitan today. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
UK, Leicester, UK, Ustad, one of our mashayikh said today, there is no bay'ah. What does this mean in relation to as-sam' wa ta'a?
I don't know what he meant by that. You gotta ask your sheikh or whatever sheikh said that. What's important is that there's no doubt in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, having an Islamic ruler, a legitimate ruler, listening to him, obeying him in the ma'ruf, and that which is khair, and you swearing your oath of allegiance, fealty, and obedience, no matter what. I'll be behind you, I'll follow you as long as you're not telling us to do haram. That's established in the sunnah. And no one can come along and say that's abrogated or canceled or etc. But the problem is, once again, people being overzealous. Person says there's no bay'ah, but you have to listen to this secular ruler. Follow him, but there's no bay'ah of this one. Okay, or people that talk about other things. Jihad fi sabilillah. There's no jihad today. Some scholars say there's no jihad today, period. It's abrogated. But when it's convenient, the same hadith, the ruler, don't say nothing about the ruler, don't criticize the ruler, and then they what? They push that. So which of the sunnah, what part of the sunnah are you going to accept wholeheartedly, and what part are you going to pick and choose? Wallahu ta'ala.
Imam, New York, Assalamu alaikum. What is meant by liqa in Abu Hurairah's narration of Hadith Jibreel?
Liqa? Please mention exactly what you're talking about.
UK, Leicester, UK, Ustad, what is meant by irja' of the fuqaha as opposed to irja' generally?
طيب. Al-irja' or murjiism, or someone being a murji', and the different types of irja' al-fuqaha versus other people's types of irja'. Irja' basically meaning at-ta'khir. Arjihhu, akhirhu, to push something back. And what's meant by it Islamically is taking deeds which is supposed to be on the front row of Iman and doing what? Pushing them back. That Iman is here and the deeds are back there. How far back? All the way in the back? A couple rows back, a little bit. You get the point? So the different types of levels of irja'. And murji'atul fuqaha are those scholars who were learned, who were studious, who were scholastic. They studied fiqh. They were involved with the study of fiqh and the teaching of fiqh. But they had some mistakes and some errors and some shortcomings concerning irja' and concerning the concept of deeds being from the title of Iman, condition of Iman, prerequisite of Iman, etc. And that the irja' wasn't as bad, nor was it as severe as some of those other groups that were extreme murjis and those who were not fuqaha. And how some of those ulama who had some of those errors and mistakes were given a pass, or they crept in or snuck in because they were fuqaha. Everyone understand this? Instead of someone just being an open, outright heretic, a person of innovation and desire and a rationalist, right? Well, Allah Ta'ala, that's in brief.
UK, Leicester, UK, Ustad, how to best understand the tabdi' that some of the Salaf made on Imam Abu Hanifa?
Next question.
UK, Leicester, UK, Ustad, can shirk of obedience ever be major kufr?
We'll stop here tonight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should knows best. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa jazakumullahu khairan.